Welcome to the DragonLance Saga Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons episode. This is the fifth in the series. It is Braca, Holmeswealth the 12th, and my name is Adam. Dragonlance came out of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, so I thought it would be fun to read the core rules aloud and discuss them perhaps with a live audience. I'd also like to take a moment and thank my collaborator patrons, the Heroes of the Lance, and invite you to consider becoming a patron or member of this channel by visiting the links in the description below. You can even pick up Dragonlance game materials using my affiliate link. We left off last time with the Cleric Spells. Now, I just want to remind everyone that as I'm reading these, I'm not going to go into all of the stats like level, range, duration, area of effect, components, casting time, and saving throw. I'm just going to give you the title and give you the explanation and description, just because, let's be quite honest, it's a lot to take in. So for your sake and my own, we're going to sort of, brush these a little bit. Cleric Spells. Notes regarding Cleric Spells. All material components required for the various spells are used by completion of the spell in question, with the notable exceptions of standard religious items, i.e. religious symbols and prayer beads or similar devices. The reversal of some spells might well place the cleric in a questionable position with respect to alignment. The use of spells which promote weal must be shunned by evil clerics in many cases. Likewise, spells which are baneful may be used only at peril by clerics of good alignment. Incautious use of spells will change the cleric's alignment if such usage continues unchecked, and it is up to the player to guard his or her character's alignment with care. In any event, the cleric must decide which of her character's alignment, must decide which application of a reversible spell will be used prior to learning it, i.e. it is not possible to have one spell both ways. In like manner, the mere request for a spell, or its opposite, through prayer will not guarantee that the spell will be given to the cleric. As the spell level becomes higher, confidence will decrease that the deity will concur. Your dungeon master might alter the material components of spells, required only religious adjuncts as material, or just do away with them. Consult your referee in this regard and ask his ruling and reasoning. First level spells. Bless. Explanation. Upon uttering the Bless spell, the caster raises the morale of friendly creatures by +1. Furthermore, it raises their 2-hit dice rolls by +1. A blessing, however, will affect only those not already engaged in melee combat. This spell can be reversed by the cleric to a curse upon enemies, which lowers morale and to hit by -1. The caster determines at what range, up to 6 inches, he or she will cast the spell, and it then affects all creatures in that area 5 inches square centered on the point of the spell was cast upon. In addition to the verbal and somatic gesture components, the bless requires holy water, while the curse requires the sprinkling of specialty polluted water. Hey Justin, thanks for joining live, man. Love your war cleric in 5e. I've never seen the clerics in 5e. Do they also have the reverse option for these spells like first edition have? Command, enchantment charm, explanation. This spell enables the cleric to issue a command of a single word. The command must be uttered in a language which the spell recipient is able to understand. The individual will obey to the best of his or her or its ability, only so long as the command is absolutely clear and unequivocal, i.e. suicide could be a noun, so the creature would ignore the command. A command to die would cause the recipient to fall in a faint or cataleptic state for 1 round, but thereafter the creature would be alive and well. Typical command words are back, halt, flee, run, stop, fall, fly, go, leave, surrender, sleep, rest, etc. Undead are not affected by a command. Creatures with intelligence of 13 or more and creatures with 6 or more hit die or experience levels are entitled to a saving throw versus magic. Creatures with 13 or higher intelligence and 6 hit dice or levels do not get 2 saving throws. Create water. Alteration reversible. Explanation. When the cleric casts a Create Water spell, 4 gallons of water are generated for every level of experience of the caster, i.e. a 2nd level cleric creates 8 gallons of water, 3rd level 12 gallons, a 4th level 16 gallons, etc. The water is clean and drinkable. It's just like rainwater. Reversing the spell Destroy Water obliterates without trace, such as vapor, mist, fog, or steam, a like quantity of water. Created water will last until normally used or evaporated, spilled, etc. Water can be created or destroyed in an area as small as will actually contain the liquid, or in an area as large as 27 cubic feet, 1 cubic yard. The spell requires at least a drop of water to create, or a pinch of dust to destroy water. Note that water cannot be created within a living thing. Cure Light Wounds, Necromantic, Reversible. Explanation. Upon laying his or her hand upon a creature, the cleric causes from 1 to 8 hit points of wound or other injury damage to the creature's body to be healed. This healing will not affect creatures without corporeal bodies, nor will it cure wounds of creatures not living or those which can be harmed only by iron, silver, and or magical weapons. Its reverse, Cause Light Wounds, operates in the same manner. And if a person is avoiding this touch, a melee combat to hit die is rolled to determine if the cleric's hand strikes the opponent and causes such a wound. Note that cure wounds are permanent only insofar as the creature does not sustain further damage, and that caused the wound will heal or can be cured, just as any normal injury will. Cause light wounds are 1 to 8 hit points of damage. Okay, so it's just like doubling the amount of spells, if I'm understanding that, Justin. Okay, that's interesting. In effect, it's the exact same thing. It's just listing the spell twice as the reverse. Which, maybe a waste of space in a book. I don't know. Detect Evil. Divination. Reversible. Explanation. This is a spell which discovers emanations of evil, or of good in the case of a reverse spell, for any creature or object. For example, evil alignment or an evilly cursed object will radiate evil, but a hidden trap or an unintelligent viper will not. The duration of a Detect Evil or Detect Good spell is 1 turn plus 1/2 turn, 5 rounds or 5 minutes, per level of the cleric. Thus, a cleric of first level of experience can cast a spell with a 1 1/2 turn duration, and second level, a 2 turn duration, 2 1/2 at third, etc. The spell has a path of detection 1 inch wide in the direction in which the cleric is facing. It requires the use of the cleric's holy or unholy symbol as its material component, with the cleric holding it before him or her. See, I agree, Justin. It seems like at the point of memorizing the spells, I would like the option of choosing the reverse or not of most of these spells. Because like the water one, I think I would always want the positive, create rather than destroy, because you're just, I don't know, evaporating the water into thin air. But the cure or harm wounds seems like, it's situational. Detect Magic. Divination. When the Detect Magic spell is cast, the cleric detects magic radiation in a path 1 inch wide and up to 3 inches long in the direction he or she is facing. The caster can turn 60 degrees per round. Note that the stone walls of 1 foot or more thickness, solid metal of but 1/12 foot thickness, or 3 feet or more of solid wood will block the spell. The spell requires the use of the cleric's holy or unholy symbol. Light. Alteration reversible. Explanation. The spell causes excitation of molecules so as to make them brightly luminous. The light thus caused is equal to torchlight in brightness, but its sphere is limited to 4 inches in diameter. It lasts for the duration indicated, 7 turns at first experience level, 8 at second, 9 at third, etc., or until the caster utters a word to extinguish the light. The light spell is reversible, causing darkness in the same area and under the same conditions, except the blackness persists for only 1/2 the duration that light would last. If the spell is cast upon a creature, the applicable magic resistance and saving throw dice rolls must be made. Success indicates that the spell affects the area immediately behind the creature rather than the creature itself. In all other cases, the spell takes effect where the caster directs as long as he or she has line of sight or unobstructed path for the spell. Light can spring from air, rock, metal, wood, or almost any similar substance. That's interesting. I didn't realize that darkness in first edition was just the reverse of the light. I mean, it makes sense that it's a reverse of the light spell. Just cast it on someone's eyeball, on their head. I never really thought about it. Interesting. Protection from evil. Abjuration. Reversible. When this spell is cast, it acts as if it were a magical armor upon the recipient. The protection encircles the recipient at 1 foot distance, thus preventing bodily contact by creatures of an enchanted or conjured nature, such as aerial servants, demons, devils, jinn, efreet, elementals, imps, invisible stalkers, night hags, quasits, salamanders, water weirds, wind walkers, and Zorn. Summoned animals or monsters are similarly hedged from the protected creature. Furthermore, any and all attacks launched by evil creatures incur a penalty of -2 from dice rolls to hit the protected creature, and any saving throws caused by such attacks are made at +2 on the protected creature's dice. This spell can be reversed to become protection from good, although it still keeps out enchanted evil creatures as well. To complete this spell, the cleric must trace a 3-foot diameter circle on the floor or ground with holy water for protection of evil, with blood for protection of good, or in the air using burning incense or smoldering dung with respect to evil good. That's interesting because essentially what you're doing is just, sort of like those old devil worshipping, ideas, or summoning the demon idea. You're just drawing a big circle on the ground in the middle of battle in order to be protected. That doesn't make any sense at all. What if you want to move? Then you're no longer protected? I'm not sure I like that. Purify food and drink. Alteration reversible. When cast, the spell will make spoiled, rotten, poisonous, or otherwise contaminated food and or water pure and suitable for eating and or drinking. Up to 1 cubic foot of food and or drink can be thus made suitable for consumption. The reverse of the spell putrefies food and drink, even spoiling holy water. Unholy water is spoiled by purify water. I've never thought about using that spell in that way. Like if you're an evil character and someone's trying to turn maybe your undead henchman, just cast putrefy food and drink on the person's body, and their holy water that they were going to use is now garbage. That's kind of funny. Remove fear. Abjuration reversible. By touch, the cleric instills courage in the spell recipient, raising the creature's saving throw against magical fear attacks by +4 on dice rolls for 1 turn. If the recipient has already been affected by fear and failed the appropriate saving throw, the touch allows another saving throw to be made, with a bonus of +1 on the dice for every 3rd level of experience of the caster, i.e. a 2nd level cleric gives a +2 bonus, a 3rd level +3, etc. A to-hit die roll must be made to touch an unwilling recipient. The reverse of the spell, Cause Fear, causes the victim to flee in panic at a maximum movement speed away from the caster for 1 round per level of the cleric causing such fear. Of course, Cause Fear can be countered by Remove Fear and vice versa. Resist Cold. Alteration. When this spell is placed on the creature by a cleric, the creature's body is inured to cold. The recipient can stand 0 degree Fahrenheit without discomfort, even totally nude. Greater cold, such as that produced by a sword of cold, ice storm, cold wand, or white dragon's breath, must be saved against. All saving throws against cold are made with a bonus of +3, and damage sustained is 1/2 if the saving throw is not made, or 1/4 if the saving throw is made, of damage normally from the attack form. The resistance lasts for 1 turn per level of experience of the caster. A pinch of sulfur is necessary to complete the spell. Sanctuary. Abjuration. When the cleric casts a sanctuary spell, any opponent must make a saving throw versus magic in order to strike or otherwise attack him or her. If the saving throw is not made, the creature will attack another and totally ignore the cleric protected by the spell. If the saving throw is made, the cleric is subject to normal attack process, including dicing for weapons to hit, saving throws, damage. Note that the spell does not prevent the operation of area attacks, fireball, ice storm, etc. During the period of protection afforded by this spell, the cleric cannot take offensive action, but he or she may use non-attack spells or otherwise attack in any way which does not violate the prohibition against offensive action. This allows the cleric to heal wounds, for example, or to bless, perform an augury, chant, cast a light in the area, not upon an opponent, and so on. The components of this spell include the cleric's holy or unholy symbol and a small silver mirror. 2nd level spells. Augury. Divination. The cleric casting an augury spell seeks to divine whether an action in the immediate future, within 3 turns, will be for the benefit or harm to the party. The base chance for correctly divining the augury is 70% plus 1% for each level of the cleric casting the spell. i.e. 71% at first level, 72% at second level, etc. Your referee will determine any adjustments due for the particular conditions of each augury. For example, assume that a party is considering the destruction of a weird seal which closes a portal. Augury is used to find if weal or woe will be the ultimate result of the party. The material component for augury is a set of gem-inlaid sticks, dragon bones or similar tokens, or the wet leaves of an infusion which remain in the container after the infused brew is consumed. If the last method is used, a crushed pearl of at least 100 gold piece value must be added to the concoction before it is consumed. Chant. Conjuring, summoning. By means of the chant, the cleric brings into being a special favor upon himself or herself and his or her party, and causes harm to his or her enemies. Once the chant spell is completed, all attacks, damage, and saving throws made by those in the area of effect who are friendly to the cleric are at +1, while those of the cleric's enemies are at -1. This bonus penalty continues as long as the cleric continues to chant the mystic syllables and is stationary. An interruption, however, such as an attack which succeeds and causes damage, grappling the chanter, or a magical silence, will break the spell. Detect Charm, Divination, Reversible. When used by a cleric, the spell will detect whether or not a person or monster is under the influence of a charm spell. Up to 10 creatures can be thus checked before the spell wanes. The reverse of the spell protects from such detection, but only a single creature can be so shielded. You know what I sometimes wonder about these types of spells? Does anyone ever memorize them? Like, I don't think I would ever use Detect Charm in like a game scenario. You know, it's just like I would never prepare for it, I should say. Like if you just happen to be in a situation where you can rest and then memorize a spell because you feel like you need it, well, that's another thing entirely. But if you're just starting your adventure or just starting your regular day, why would you ever choose Detect Charm? And there's so many other spells like that. Find Traps, Divination. When a cleric casts a Find Trap spell, all traps, concealed normally or magically, of magical or mechanical nature become visible to him or her. Note that this spell is directional, and the caster must face the desired direction in order to determine if a trap is laid on that particular direction. Hold Person, Enchantment Charm. This spell holds immobile and freezes in place from 1 to 3 humans or humanoid creatures, see below, for 5 or more melee rounds. The level of the cleric casting the Hold Person spell dictates the length of time the effect will last. The basic duration is 5 melee rounds at first level, 6 rounds at second level, 7 rounds at third level, etc. If the spell is cast at 3 persons, each gets a saving throw at the normal score. If only 2 persons are being enspelled, each makes their saving throw at -1 on their die. If the spell is cast at but 1 person, the saving throw die is at -2. Persons making their saving throws are totally unaffected by the spell. Creatures affected by a Hold Person spell are brownies, dryads, dwarves, elves, gnolls, gnomes, goblins, half-elves, halflings, half-orcs, hobgoblins, humans, kobolds, lizardmen, nixies, orcs, pixies, sprites, and troglodytes. The spellcaster needs a small, straight piece of iron as the material component of the spell. No Alignment. Divination. Reversible. A no alignment spell enables the cleric to exactly read the aura of a person, human, semi-human, or non-human. This will reveal the exact alignment of the person. Up to 10 persons can be examined with this spell. The reverse, totally obscure alignment, even from the spell of a single person for 1 turn, 2 persons for 5 rounds, etc. Certain magical devices will negate the ability to no alignment. This is another one of those spells that seems like it's kind of useless. And I know on the surface, it's like, well, if I know their alignment, I know how they're going to act. But no, you don't. There's so many various ways that you can act within any given alignment, and so much just random chaos of action that simply by knowing someone's inherent alignment does not give you any insight into what they're going to actually do. So I'm not sure that's a very useful spell at all. Resist Fire, Alteration. When this spell is placed upon a creature by a cleric, the creature's body is toughened to withstand heat, and boiling temperature is comfortable. The recipient of the resist fire spell can even stand in the midst of very hot or magical fires, such as those produced by red hot charcoal, a large amount of burning oil, flaming swords, firestorms, fireballs, meteor swarms, or red dragon's breath. But these will affect the creature to some extent. The recipient of the spell gains a bonus of +3 on saving throws against such an attack form, and all damage sustained is reduced by 50%. Therefore, if the saving throw is not made, the creature sustains 1/2 damage, and if the saving throw is made, only 1/4 damage is sustained. Resistance to fire lasts for 1 turn for each level of experience of the cleric placing the spell. The caster needs a drop of mercury as the material component of the spell. Silence, 15-foot radius, alteration. Upon casting this spell, complete silence prevails in the area of its effect. All sound is stopped, so all conversation is impossible. Spells cannot be cast, and no noise whatsoever issues forth. The spell can be cast into the air or upon an object. The spell of silence lasts for 2 rounds for each level of experience of the cleric, i.e., 2 rounds at first level, 4 at second, 6 at third, 8 at fourth, and so on. The spell can be cast upon a creature, and the effect will then radiate from the creature and move as it moves. If the creature is unwilling, it saves against the spell, and if the saving throw is made, the spell effect locates about 1 foot behind the target creature. So you always use purify food and drink, mainly for the role play. I don't think your DM will ever try to poison us. Don't say that, man, because as soon as you do, and he sees that, he's going to be like, okay, all right, poisoning is a-coming. Slow poison, necromantic. When this spell is placed upon a poisoned individual, it greatly slows the effects of any venom, even causing a supposedly dead individual to have life restored. If it is cast upon the victim within a number of turns less than or equal to the level of the experience of the cleric after the poisoning was suffered, i.e., a victim of poisoned up to 10 turns previously could be temporarily saved by a 10th or higher level cleric who casts slow poison upon the victim. While this spell does not neutralize the venom, it does prevent it from substantially harming the individual for the duration of its magic. But each turn, the poisoned creature will lose 1 hit point from the effect of the venom, although the venom will never go below 1 hit point while the slow poison spell's duration lasts. Thus, in the example above, the victim poisoned 10 turns previously has only 10 hit points, so when the 10th level cleric casts the spell, the victim remains with 1 hit point until the spell duration expires, and hopefully during that period a full cure can be accomplished. The material components of the spell are the cleric's holy or unholy symbol and a bud of garlic, which must be crushed and smeared in the victim's bare feet. That's an interesting role-playing moment. Snake Charm. Enchantment Charm. When this spell is cast, a hypnotic pattern is set up which causes 1 or more snakes to cease all activity except a semi-erect posture, swaying movement. If the snakes are charmed while in a torpor, the duration of the spell is 3 to 6 turns, d4 plus 2. If the snakes are not torpid, but are not aroused and angry, the charm lasts 1 to 3 turns. If the snakes are angry and or attacking, the snake charm spell will last from 5 to 8 melee rounds, d4 plus 4. The cleric casting the spell can charm snakes whose hit points are less than or equal to those of the cleric. On the average, a first-level cleric could charm snakes with a total of 4 or 5 hit points, a second-level cleric 9 hit points, a third-level 13 or 14 hit points, etc. The hit points can represent a single snake or several of the reptiles, but the total hit points cannot exceed those of the cleric casting the spell. Speak with animals, alteration. By employing this spell, the cleric is empowered to comprehend and communicate with any warm or cold-blooded animal which is not mindless, such as an amoeba. The cleric is able to ask questions, receive answers, and generally be on amicable terms with the animal. This ability lasts for 2 melee rounds for each level of experience of the cleric employing the spell, even if the bent of the animal is opposed to that of the cleric, evil good or good over evil. It and any others of the same kind with it will not attack while the spell lasts. If the animal is neutral or the same general bent as the cleric, evil evil or good over good, there is a possibility that the animal and its like associates will do some favor or service for the cleric. This possibility will be determined by the referee by consulting a special reaction chart using the charisma of the cleric and his actions as the major determinants. Note that this spell differs from Speak with Monsters, for it allows conversation only with basic, normal, non-fantastic creatures such as apes, bears, cats, dogs, elephants, and so on. That's interesting. I must have never read this whole thing before, because if you're being attacked by a bear in the wilderness, you just cast Speak with Animals and he will stop attacking you. That's actually really helpful. That's much more helpful than I ever thought that spell was. Spiritual Hammer, Invocation. By calling upon his or her deity, the cleric casts a spiritual hammer spell, brings into existence a field of force, which is shaped vaguely like a hammer. This area of force is hammer-sized, and as long as the cleric who invoked it concentrates upon the hammer, it will strike at any opponent within its range as desired by the cleric. The force area strikes as a magical weapon equal to 1 plus per 3 levels of experience, or the spellcaster for purposes of being able to strike creatures, although it has no magical pluses whatsoever to hit. And the damage it causes when it scores a hit is exactly the same as a normal war hammer, i.e. 1 to 6 versus opponents of man-sized or smaller, 1 to 4 upon larger opponents. Furthermore, the hammer strikes at exactly the same level as the cleric controlling it, just as if the cleric was personally wielding the weapon. As soon as the cleric ceases concentration, the spiritual hammer is dispelled. Note, if the cleric is behind an opponent, the force can strike from this position, thus gaining all bonuses for such an attack and negating defense protections such as shield and dexterity. The material component for the spell is a normal war hammer, with the cleric must hurl towards the opponent whilst uttering a plea to his or her deity. The hammer disappears when the spell is cast. That is strange. Why don't you just hit him with the hammer? Why waste a spell? Interesting. I mean, I understand there's a range component to that, but Animate Dead, Necromantic. This spell creates the lowest of the undead monsters, skeletons, or zombies from the bones or bodies of dead humans. This effect is to cause those remains to become animated and obey the command of the cleric casting the spell. The skeletons or zombies will follow, remain in an area, and attack any creature, or just a specific type of creatures, entering the place, etc. The spell will animate the monsters until they are destroyed or until the magic is dispelled. See Dispel Magic Spell. The cleric is able to animate 1 skeleton or 1 zombie for each level of experience he or she has attained. Thus, a 2nd level cleric can animate 2 of these monsters, a 3rd level 3, etc. The act of animating dead is not basically a good one, and it must be used with careful consideration and good reason by clerics of good alignment. It requires a drop of blood, a piece of human flesh, and a pinch of bone powder or a bone shard to complete the spell. This description actually reminds me of the game EverQuest when I used to play it back in the day when it first came out. I played a Shadow Knight, and we could summon a pet, basically, that was a skeletal pet. I've never done this in a D&D game, but that seems like a totally logical thing to do, is use Animate Dead, even as a good character, in order to have a protection, just an extra pet to attack on your behalf. That's actually a really good role-playing option for this, I think. I'm going to have to do that. You know what? I used to play this Cleric of Chemish in an old Dragonlance campaign. I carried around a scythe. I was all draped in robes, like black robes, but I had some armor underneath them. It was actually a really, really cool character, but this would have been a really great add-on action, which I never thought of at the time, of just summoning undead and just having them as your henchmen. A little role-playing there. That'd be badass. Continual Light. Alteration. Reversible. This spell is similar to a light spell, except that it lasts until negated by a continual darkness or dispel magic spell, and its brightness is very great, being nearly as illuminating as full daylight. It can be cast into air or onto an object or at a creature. In the third case, the continual light affects the space about 1 foot behind the creature if the latter makes its saving throw. Note that this spell will blind a creature if it is successfully cast upon the visual organs, for example. Its reverse causes complete absence of light. Create food and water alteration. When this spell is cast, the cleric causes food and or water to appear. The food thus creates a highly nourishing, and each cubic foot of the material will sustain 3 human-sized creatures or 1 horse-sized creature for a full day. For each level of experience the cleric has attained, 1 cubic foot of food and or water is created by the spell, i.e. 2 cubic feet of food are created by a second level cleric, 3 by a third, 4 by a fourth, and so on, or the second level cleric could create 1 cubic foot of food and 1 cubic foot of water, etc. You're playing a 5e Dragonlance setting now, a cleric of Gary Gygax. That sounds awesome. Are you streaming it or is it just at home? Because I'd like to check out a 5e Dragonlance campaign, I think. Just reading this makes me want to play this so bad. All right. Cure blindness, abjuration, reversible. By touching the creature afflicted, the cleric employing the spell can permanently cure most forms of blindness. Its reverse, cause blindness, requires a successful touch upon the victim, and if the victim then makes a saving throw, the effect is negated. Cure disease, abjuration, reversible. The cleric cures most diseases, including those of a parasitic, bacterial, or viral nature, by placing his or her hand upon the diseased creature. The affliction rapidly disappears thereafter, making the cured creature whole and well in from 1 turn to 1 week, depending on the kind of disease and the state of its advancement with the cure took place. The reverse of the cure disease spell is cause disease. To be affected, the cleric must touch the intended victim, and the victim must fail the saving throw. The disease caused will begin to affect the victim in 1 to 6 turns, causing the afflicted creature to lose 1 hit point per turn and 1 point of strength per hour, until the creature is at 10% of original hit points and strength, at which time the afflicted is weak and virtually helpless. You know, poison and disease are 2 things that I used to always deal with in my games in 1st edition and 2nd edition. But I don't recall ever dealing with them in 3rd or 4th editions. And I don't know if it was just not played up as much, or the campaigns I was running or being a part of never really dealt with them much. But disease was like a big deal, especially like if you were playing Ravenloft, for example. That was a big deal. Oh, that's cool. It's just on Roll20. Dispel magic, abjuration. When a cleric casts a spell, it neutralizes or negates the magic it comes in contact with as follows. A dispel magic will not affect a specially enchanted item, such as a scroll, magic ring, wand, rod, staff, miscellaneous magic item, magic weapon, magic shield, or magic armor. It will destroy magic potions that are treated as 12th level for purposes of this spell, remove spells cast upon a person or object, or counter the casting of spells in the area of effect. The base chance for success of the dispel magic is 50%. For every level of experience the character casting this dispel magic above that of the creature whose magic is to be dispelled, or above the efficiency level of the object from which the magic is issuing, the base chance increases by 5%. So that if there are 10 levels of difference, there is a 100% chance. For every level below the experience efficiency level of the creature or object, the base chance is reduced by 2%. Note that this spell can be very effective when used upon charmed and similarly beguiled creatures. It is automatic in negating the spellcaster's own magic. I was just thinking of a sort of a dickish way of using this spell. If you're just pounding down creatures and they like reach for their, like a heal wounds, cure light wounds potion or something like that, just cast a spell magic on the potion before they can drink it, and then just nothing happens. Again, a dickish move, but kind of funny too. Feigned Death, necromantic. Except as noted above, this spell is the same as the 3rd level magic user spell, Feigned Death. Note that a character of any level may be affected by the cleric casting this spell, and that the material components are a pinch of graveyard dirt and the cleric's holy or unholy symbol. Again, this spell reminds me of my Shadow Knight in EverQuest back in the day. Glyph of Warding, abjuration, evocation. A glyph of warding is a powerful inscription magically drawn to prevent unauthorized or hostile creatures from passing, entering, or opening. It can be used to guard a small bridge, ward an entry, or as a trap on a chest or box. When the spell is cast, the creature weaves a tracery of faintly glowing lines around the warding sigil. For every square foot of area to be protected, One segment of time is required to trace the wording lines from the glyph, plus the initial segment during which the sigil itself is traced. A maximum of 5 feet times 5-foot area per level can be warded. When this spell is completed, the glyph and tracery become invisible, but any creature touching the protected area without first speaking the name of the glyph the cleric has used to serve as a ward will be subject to the magic it stores. Saving throws apply and will either reduce effects by 1/2 or negate them according to the glyph employed. The cleric must use incense to trace this spell and then sprinkle the area with powdered diamond, at least 2,000 gold pieces worth, if it exceeds 50 square feet. Typical glyph shock for 2 points of electric damage per level of the spellcaster, exploding for a like amount of fire damage, paralyze, blind, or even drain a life energy level if the cleric is of high enough level to cast this glyph. Whoa! That's huge! Locate object. Divination reversible. This spell aids in location of a known or familiar object. The cleric casts this spell, slowly turns, and knows when he or she is facing in the direction of the object to be located, provided that the object is within range, i.e. 7 inches for first level clerics, 8 inches for second, 9 inches for third, etc. The casting requires the use of a piece of lodestone. The spell will locate such objects as apparel, jewelry, furniture, tools, weapons, or even a ladder or stairway. By reversible, obscure object, the cleric is able to hide an object from location by spell, crystal ball, or similar means. Neither application of the spell will affect a living creature. All right, check this out. I just want to show you the little spiders. I love these little illustrations in these. Every time I see one, I'm going to show you it, just because they're great. They're just great. All right. Prayer, conjuration, summoning. This spell exactly duplicates the effects of a chant with regard to bonus of +1 for friendly attacks and saving throws and -1 on enemy dice. However, once the prayer is uttered, the cleric can do other things, unlike a chant which he or she must continue to make the spell effective. The cleric needs a silver holy symbol, prayer beads, or a similar device as the material component for the spell. Remove curse, abjuration, reversible. Upon casting this spell, the cleric is usually able to remove a curse, whether it be on an object, a person, or in the form of some undesired sending or evil presence. Note that the remove curse spell will not affect a cursed shield, weapon, or suit of armor, for example, although the spell will typically enable the person afflicted with any such cursed item to be rid of it. The reverse of the spell is not permanent. The bestow curse lasts for 1 turn for every level of experience of the cleric using the spell. It will lower 1 ability of the victim to 3. Whoa, that's huge. Your DM will determine which by random selection. 50% of the time, reduce the victim's 2-hit and saving throw probabilities by -4, 25% of the time, or make the victim 50% likely to be per turn to drop whatever he or she or it is holding, or simply do nothing in the case of a creature not using tools. 25% of the time. That's funny. It is possible for a cleric to devise his or her own curse, and it should be of similar in power to those shown. Consult your referee. The target of a bestow curse spell must be touched. If the victim is touched, a saving throw is still applicable, and if it is successful, the effect is negated. All right, I appreciate that, Jake Fire. I'll have to check that out. I mean, let's be honest. This whole channel is about Dragonlance or those things tangentially, connected to Dragonlance. And so, yeah, I'd love to talk to a guy who's converting them. I reached out to Dragonlance Nexus, but they haven't replied at all. So, a little pressure there. Speak with Dead, Necromantic. Upon casting a Speak with Dead spell, the cleric is able to ask several questions of a dead creature in a set period of time and receive answers according to the knowledge of that creature. Of course, the cleric must be able to converse in the language which the dead creature once used. The length of time the creature has been dead is a factor, since only higher level clerics can converse with the long dead. Likewise, the number of questions which can be answered and the length of time in which the questions can be asked are dependent upon the level of the experience of the cleric. The cleric needs a holy symbol and burning incense in order to cast this spell upon the body, remains, or portion thereof. Let me show you this table here. So we've got level of experience, maximum length of time dead, time questioned, and number of questions. There's a lot of assumptions, I think, on this whole speak with dead thing, because you're dead doesn't mean you know anything. You know what I mean? You could have just like been sucker punched or, you know, just assassinated, and so you know literally nothing about why you're there. Or, you know, it could be a very interesting and really screwy thing to do for players as a dungeon master, in order to place a dead body in a location that would be used by speak with dead, but then have the person have been brought there, and so they know nothing about the area. You know, like they were brought there after death. So they're like, no, I was at an inn. I was, drinking too much, and I just died of consumption or something. You know, like that'd be kind of funny. Or pick a Kender's corpse. That's amazing, Justin. And they just don't shut up. Or like a gnome, and they're speaking so quickly you can't even understand them in the first place. That would be really funny. All right, sorry. I'll go back to reading the book. Oh, no. Okay, here we go. It was like delaying for a while. 4th level spells. Cure serious wounds. Necromantic. Reversible. This spell is a more potent version of the Cure Light Wounds spell. Upon laying his or her hands on a creature, the cleric causes from 3 to 17, 2d8 plus 1, hit points of wound or other injury damage to the creature's body to be healed. This healing will affect only those creatures listed in the Cure Light Wounds spell explanation. Cause Serious Wounds, the reverse of the spell, operates similarly to the Cause Light Wounds spell, the victim having to be touched first, and if the touch is successful, it will inflict 3 to 17 points. Detect Lie, Divination, Reversible. When the cleric employs this spell, the recipient is immediately able to determine if truth is being spoken. The spell lasts for 1 round for each level of experience of the cleric casting the Detect Lie. Gold dust is necessary for the spell. Its reverse, Undetectable Lie, makes bald-face untruths seem reasonable, or simply counters the Detect Lie spell powers. The reverse spell requires brass dust as a material component. Divination. That's funny. Similar to an augury spell, a divination spell is used to determine information regarding an area. The area can be a small woods, large building, or section of a dungeon level. In any case, its location must be known. The spell gives information regarding the relative strength of creatures in the area, whether a rich, moderate, or poor treasure is there, and the relative chances for incurring the wrath of evil or good supernatural, super powerful beings if the area is invaded and attacked. The base chance for correct divination is 60%, plus 1% for each level of experience of the cleric casting the spell, i.e. 65% at 5th level, 66% at 6th level, etc. The dungeon master will make adjustments to this base chance considering the facts regarding actual area being divined. If the result is not correct, inaccurate information will be obtained. The material component of the divination are a sacrificial creature, incense, and the holy symbol of the cleric. If an unusually potent divination is attempted, sacrifice of particularly valuable gems or jewelry and or magic items may be required. Geez, you gotta sacrifice a creature for some divination? I never knew that. That's a high barrier of entry. Hey, Jacob. It is totally cheaper to lie. Exorcise, abjuration. The spell of exorcise will negate possession of a creature or an object by any outside or supernatural force. This includes control of a creature by some force in an object, possession by magic jar spell, demonic possession, curse, or even charm, for the exorcise spell is similar to a dispel magic spell. Furthermore, it will affect a magical item if such is the object of the exorcism. Thus, a soul object of any sort will come under successful exorcism, will make the life force of the creature concerned wholly inhabit its nearest material body, wholly and completely. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual Demon. The exorcise spell, once begun, cannot be interrupted, or else it is spoiled and useless. The base chance for success is a random 1% to 100%. Each turn of exorcism, the dice are rolled, and if the base chance number or less is rolled, the spell is successful. Base chance of success is modified by -1 for each level of difference between the cleric's level of experience and the level of the possessor or possessing magic, where the smaller number is the cleric's level. In the obverse, a 1% cumulative is added. The referee can determine base chance according to the existing circumstances if he or she so desires. Material components for this spell are the holy object of the cleric and holy water, or unholy in the case of evil clerics with respect to object and water. A religious artifact or relic can increase the chance of success from 1% to 50%, according to the power of the artifact or relic. I've never run into an exorcism in a D&D game. I think it'd be kind of interesting to deal with it and just sort of have that role-playing moment. It'd be kind of cool. It could also be, it could be like a Sam Raimi situation where it's like a ridiculous. You guys ever see like Drag Me to Hell, where the goat is actually possessed by a demon during some seance. And it's just this really ridiculous scenario of them trying to exorcise the demon from the goat. It's funny. All right. Lower water. Alteration. Reversible. The cleric casting a lower water spell causes water or similar fluid in the area of effect to sink away. Lowering is 5% of original effect for every level of experience of the cleric, i.e. 40% at 8th level, 45% at 9th, 50% at 10th, etc. The effect of the spell lasts for 1 turn for each level of experience of the cleric casting it. Likewise, the area of effect increases by level of experience. An 8th level cleric affecting an area of 8 inches by 8 inches, a 9th level an area of 9 inches by 9 inches, and so forth. Material components of the spell are the cleric's religious symbol and a pinch of dust. The reverse of the spell causes the water or similar fluid to return to its normal highest level, plus 1 foot per every level of experience of the cleric casting it. Neutralize poison. Alteration. Reversible. By means of a neutralize poison spell, the cleric detoxifies any sort of venom in the creature or substance touched. Note that an opponent, such as a poisonous reptile or snake, or even an envenomed weapon of an opponent, unwilling to be so touched, requires the cleric to score a hit in melee combat. Effects of the spell are permanent only with respect to poison existing in the touched creature at this time of the touch, i.e. creatures or objects which generate new poison will not be permanently detoxified. The reversed spell Poison likewise requires an attack, a 2-hit touch, which succeeds, and the victim is allowed a saving throw versus poison if the latter is unsuccessful. The victim is killed by the poison. Protection from evil, 10-foot radius, abjuration, reversible. The globe of protection of the spell is identical in all respects to a protection from evil spell, except that it encompasses a much larger area, and the duration of the protection from evil 10-foot radius spell is greater. To complete this spell, the cleric must trace a circle 20 feet in diameter using holy water or blood, incense, or smoldering dung, as according to the protection from evil spell. All right, so at the beginning of combat, the cleric's going to go run around drawing a 20-foot diameter circle? Give me a break. This is the most useless spell ever. Like, that doesn't make any sense. All right. I always imagine this spell being used in combat and not... Yeah, don't carry around dung, people, all right? On the off chance you want to use a protection from evil spell. Worst traveling companion ever. Why does our cleric always smell like shit? Like, seriously. You guys are going to appreciate this later. Speak with plants. Oh, man. Alteration. Yeah, just walk the donkey in a circle. Come on, give him a laxative. Speak with plants. Alteration. When cast, a Speak with Plants spell enables the cleric to converse, in a very rudimentary terms, with all sorts of living vegetables. Thus, the cleric can question plants as to whether or not creatures have passed through them, cause thickets to part to enable easy passage, requires vines to entangle pursuers and similar things. The spell does not enable the cleric to animate non-ambulatory vegetation. The power of the spell lasts for 1 melee round for each level of experience of the cleric who cast it. All vegetation within the area of effect are under command of the spell. The material components for this spell are a drop of water, a pinch of dung, and a flame. Lots of poop being used in these spells. Huh. Yeah, definitely don't mix up those spell components. Sticks to snakes. Alteration reversible. By means of this spell, the cleric is able to change 1 stick to a snake for each level of experience he or she has attained, i.e. a 9th level cleric can change 9 sticks into 9 snakes. These snakes will attack as commanded by the cleric. There must of course be sticks or similar pieces of wood, such as torches, spears, etc., to turn into snakes. Note that magical items such as staves and spears, which are enchanted, are not affected by the spell. Only sticks within the area of effect will be changed. The probability of a snake thus changing being venomous is 5% per level experience of the spellcaster, so that there's a 55% probability of any given snake created by the spell being poisoned with sticks are turned into snakes by an 11th level cleric, 60% at 12th level, etc. The effect lasts for 2 melee rounds for each level of experience of the spellcaster. The material component of the spell are a small piece of bark and several snake scales. The reverse changes snakes to sticks for the duration appropriate, or it negates the sticks to snakes spell according to the level of the cleric countering the spell, i.e. 10th level cleric casting the reverse spell can turn only 10 snakes back to sticks. That would be a really cool, like if you're, just for example, your boat crashes on an island and a bunch of natives come out to attack you, or like cannibals or something, and they have just a whole bunch of spears. You just turn all of their spears into snakes that then go to start attacking them. Like, what type of god would you appear to be in those situations? They're pretty dope. Yeah. Now you know why they start with incense in 5e. Tongues, alteration, reversible. This spell enables the cleric to speak the language of any creature inside the spell area, whether it's a racial tongue or an alignment language. The reverse of the spell cancels the effect of tongue's spell or confuses verbal communication of any sort within the area of effect. All right, let me get some coffee here real quick before we start the 5th level spells. Fifth level spells. Atonement, abjuration. This spell is used by the cleric to remove the onus of unwilling or unknown deeds from the person who is the subject of the atonement. The spell will remove the effects of a magical alignment change as well. The person for whom atonement is being made must be either truly repenitent or not in command of his or her own will, so as to be able to be repenitent. Your referee will judge the spell in this regards, noting any past instances of its use upon the person. Deliberate misdeeds and acts of knowing and willful nature cannot be atoned for with this spell. The material components of the spell are the cleric's religious symbol, prayer beads, or wheel or book, and burning incense. Commune, divination. By use of a commune spell, the cleric is able to contact his or her divinity, or agents thereof, and request information in the form of questions which can be answered by a simple yes or no. The cleric is allowed 1 such question for every level of experience he or she has attained. The answers given will be correct. It is probable that the referee will limit the use of the commune spells to 1 per adventure, 1 per week, or even 1 per month, for the gods dislike frequent interruptions. The material components necessary to a commune spell are the cleric's religious symbol, holy or unholy water, and incense. How bugged would you be if you were a god and your doggone cleric was constantly bugging you for a commune spell? It's like being on speed dial, or I guess texting. Like they're just constantly sending you memes. Like, honestly, just leave me alone. Yes, you'll be fine. Just go in that direction. Stop asking questions. Your god ghosted you. Cure critical wounds. Necromantic, reversible. The Cure Critical Wounds spell is a very potent version of the Cure Light Wounds spell. The cleric lays his or her hand upon a creature and heals from 6 to 27, 3d8 plus 3, hit points of damage from wounds or other damage. This spell does not affect creatures excluded in the Cure Light Wounds spell explanation. Its reverse, Cause Serious Wounds, operates in the same fashion as other Cause Wounds spells, requiring a successful touch to inflict the 6 to 27 hit points of damage. Caused wounds heal as do wounds of other sorts. Dispel Evil, Abjuration, Reversible. The cleric using this spell causes summoned creatures of evil nature or monsters enchanted and caused to perform evil deeds to return to their own plane or place. Examples of such creatures are aerial servants, demons, devils, jinn, ifrit, elementals, and invisible stalkers. Note that the spell lasts for 1 melee round for each level of experience of the caster, and while the spell is in effect, all creatures which could be affected by its attack at a -7 penalty to their 2-hit dice when engaging the spell caster. The reverse of the spell, Dispel Good, functions against summoned or enchanted creatures of good alignment or sent to aid the cause of good. The material components for this spell are the cleric's religious object and holy or unholy water. Flame Strike, Evocation. When the cleric calls down a Flame Strike spell, a column of fire roars downward in the exact location called for by the caster. If any creature is within the area of effect of a Flame Strike, it must make a saving throw. Failure to make the saving throw means the creature has sustained 6 to 48, wow, 68, hit points of damage. Otherwise, 3 to 24, 3d8 hit points of damage are taken. The material component of this spell is a pinch of sulfur. Insect Plague. I want to show this little image here. He's just pointing. Insects. Bzzz. Sorry. I like the illustrations. Conjuration or summoning. When this spell is cast by the cleric, a horde of creeping, hopping, and flying insects swarm in a thick cloud. These insects obscure vision, limited it to 3 inches. Creatures with the insect plague sustain 1 hit point of damage for each melee round they remain in due to the bites and stings of the insects, regardless of armor class. The referee will cause all creatures with fewer than 5 hit dice to check morale. Creatures with 2 or fewer hit dice will automatically move at their fastest possible speed in a straight line in a random direction until they are not less than 24 inches distant from the cloud of insects. Creatures with fewer than 5 hit dice will fail their morale check will behave likewise. Heavy smoke will drive off insects within its bounds. Fire will also drive insects away. A wall of fire in a ringed shape will keep the insect plague outside its confines, but a fireball will simply clear insects from its blast area for 1 turn. Lightning and cold or ice act likewise. The plague lasts for 1 turn for each level of experience of the cleric casting the spell, and therefore the insects disperse. The insects swarm in an area which centers around a summoning point determined by the spellcaster, which point can be up to 36 inches distant from the cleric. The insect plague does not move thereafter for as long as it lasts, noting that the spell can be countered by casting a Dispel magic upon the summoned point. A Cube of Force, a special magic item, would keep insects away from a character seeking the center of the swarm, but invisibility would afford no protection. The material component for the spell are a few grains of sugar, some kernels of grain, and a smear of fat. Plane Shift, Alteration. When the Plane Shift spell is cast, the cleric moves him or herself or some other creature to another plane of existence. The recipient of the spell will remain in the new plane until sent forth by some like means. If several persons link hands in a circle, up to 7 can be affected by the plane shift at the same time. The material component of this spell is a small forked metal rod, the exact size and metal type dictating to which plane of existence the spell will send the affected creatures. Your referee will determine specifics regarding how and what planes are reached. An unwilling victim must be touched in order to be sent thusly, and in addition, the creature also is allowed a saving throw, and if the latter is successful, the effect of the spell is negated. I wonder how you would apply Plane Shift in Dragonlance, because they are very much more restrictive, you know? I mean, Raceland, he had to find a cleric to help him get into the abyss, but I don't know. Could they just cast plane shift? Like, why didn't Takesis just cast plane shift and put herself in the mortal world? Why does she have to do a whole, you know, doorway? I don't know. Quest. Enchantment Charm. The quest is a spell by means of which the cleric requires the affected creature to perform a service and return the cleric with proof that the deed was accomplished. The quest can, for example, require require the location and return of some important or valuable object, the rescue of a notable person, the release of some creature, the capture of a stronghold, the slaying of a person, and the delivery of some item, and so forth. If the quest is not properly followed due to disregard, delay, or perversion, the creature affected by the spell loses 1 from its saving throw dice for each day of such action, and this penalty will not be removed until the quest is properly discharged, or the cleric cancels it. There are certain circumstances which will temporarily suspend a quest, and others which will discharge or cancel it. Your Dungeon Master will give you appropriate information as the need to know arises. The material component of this spell is the cleric's religious symbol. That's interesting. That's until fulfilled. That could be a really interesting way of compelling a NPC, or like a bad guy, you know? Interesting. Go bring me a milkshake, bad guy, before you attack me next. Raise Dead. Necromantic. Reversible. When the cleric casts a Raise Dead spell, he or she can restore life to a dwarf, gnome, half-elf, halfling, or human. The length of time which the person has been dead is of importance, as a cleric can raise dead persons only up to a certain point, the limit being 1 day for each level of experience of the cleric, i.e. a 9th level cleric can raise a person dead for up to 9 days. Note that the body of the person must be whole, or otherwise missing parts will still be missing when the person is brought back to life. Also, the resurrected person must make a saving throw to survive the ordeal. See character abilities, Constitution. Furthermore, the raised person is weak and helpless in any event, and he or she will need 1 full day of rest in bed for each day he or she was dead. The somatic component of the spell is a pointed finger. The reverse of this spell, Slay Living, allows the victim of a saving throw, and if it is successful, the victim sustains damage equal only to that caused by a cause serious wounds spell, i.e. 3 to 7 hit points. 3 to 17, I'm sorry. An evil cleric can freely use the reverse spell. A good cleric must exercise extreme caution in its employment, being absolutely certain that the victim of the Slay Living spell is evil, and that his or her death is a matter of great necessity and for good. Otherwise, the alignment of the cleric will be sharply changed. Note that newly made undead, excluding skeletons, which fall within the days of being dead, limit are affected by raised dead spells cast upon them. The effect of the spell is to cause them to become resurrected dead, providing the Constitution permits survival. Otherwise, they are simply dead. Isn't the old Dragonlance setting where once you hit level 20, the gods boot you to another realm just because of what Raceland did? It was actually 18th level, but yes, you're right. You would immediately be ejected from the world. I don't remember if they did that in 3rd edition. I know it was in 1st and 2nd, but interesting. True Seeing, Divination, Reversible. When the cleric employs this spell, all things within the area of the true seeing effect appear as they actually are. Secret doors become plain. The exact location of displaced things is obvious. Invisible things and those which are astral or ethereal become quite visible. Illusions and apparitions are seen through. Polymorphed, changed, or magicked things are apparent. Even the aura protected by creatures becomes visible so that the cleric is able to know whether they are good or evil or between. The spell requires an ointment for the eyes. The ointment is made for a very rare mushroom powder, saffron, and fat. The reverse of the spell, false seeing, causes the person to see things as they are not. Rich being poor, rough, smooth, beautiful, ugly. The ointment for the reverse spell is concocted of oil, poppy dust, and pink orchid essence. For both spells, the ointment must be aged for 1 to 6 months. Yeah, one man ruined it for everyone. Thanks a lot, Raceland. Excuse me. 6th level spells. Aerial Servant, Conjuring Summoning. This spell summons an invisible aerial servant. See Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual. To do the bidding of the cleric who conjured it. The creature does not fight, but it obeys the command of the cleric with respect to finding and returning with whatever object or creature that is described to it. Of course, the object or creature must be such as to allow this aerial servant to physically bring it to the cleric or his or her assign. This spellcaster should keep in mind the consequences of having an aerial servant prevented, for any reason, from completing of the assigned duty. The spell lasts for a maximum of 1 day for each level of experience of the cleric who casts it. The aerial servant returns to its own plane whenever the spell lapses. Its duty is fulfilled, it is dispersed, the cleric releases it, or the cleric is slain. The cleric must have a protection from evil spell or be within a magic circle, thaumaturgic triangle, or pentagram when summoning an aerial servant, unless the cleric has his or her religious symbol or a religious artifact or relic to use to control the creature. Otherwise, the creature will slay its summoner. Whoa! And return from whence it came. The aerial servant will always attack by complete surprise when sent on a mission and gain the benefits of 4 free melee rounds unless the creature involved is able to detect invisible objects, in which case a 6-sided dice is rolled and 1 equals 1 free round, 2 equals 2 free rounds, 3 free rounds, 4 free rounds, and 5 or 6 equals 0 free rounds. The opponent is not surprised at all. Each round, the aerial servant must roll dice to score a hit, and when a hit is scored, it means the aerial servant has grabbed the item or creature it was sent to take and bring back to the cleric. If a creature is involved, the aerial servant's strength is compared to the strength of the creature to be brought. If the creature in question does not have a strength rating, roll the appropriate number of the correct type of hit dice for the aerial servant and for the creature it has grabbed. The higher the total is the stronger. Wow, that is 4 free attacks. That's interesting. Animate object, alteration. This powerful spell enables the cleric casting it to imbue inanimate objects with mobility and a semblance of life. The animated object or objects then attack whoever or whatever the cleric first designates. The objects can be of any material whatsoever: wood, metal, stone, fabric, leather, ceramic, glass, etc. The speed of movement of the object is dependent upon the means of propulsion and its weight. A large wooden table would be rather heavy, but its legs would give it speed. A rug could only slither along. A jar would roll. Thus, a large stone pedestal would rock forward at 1 inch per round. A stone statue would move at 4 inches per round. A wooden statue 8 inches per round, and an ivory stool of light weight would move at 12 inches. Slithering movement is about 1 inch to 2 inches per round. Rolling 3 inches to 6 inches per round. The damage caused by the attack of an animated object is dependent upon its form and composition. Light, supple objects can only obscure vision, obstruct movement, bind, trip, smother, etc. Light, hard objects can fall upon or otherwise strike for 1 to 2 hit points of damage, or possibly obstruct and trip, as do light, supple objects. Hard, medium weight objects can crush or strike for 2 to 8 hit points of damage. Those larger and heavier doing 3 to 12, 4 to 16, or even 5 to 20 hit points of damage. The frequency of attack of animated objects is dependent upon the method of locomotion, appendages, and method of attack. This varies as seldom as once every 5 melee rounds to as frequently as once per melee round. The armor class of the object animated is basically a function of material and movement ability with regard to hitting. Damage is dependent upon the type of weapon and the object struck. A sharp cutting weapon is effective against fabric, leather, wood, and like substances. Heavy smashing and crushing weapons are useful against stone, wood, and metal objects. Your referee will determine all of these factors, as well as how much damage the animated object can sustain before being destroyed. The cleric can animate 1 cubic foot of material for each level of experience he or she has attained. Thus, a 14th level cleric could animate 1 or more objects whose solid volume did not exceed 14 cubic feet, i.e. a large statue, 2 rugs, 3 chairs, or a dozen average crocs. Jeez. I just imagine animating a rug beneath the hero's feet as they enter a room, to defeat the evil cleric. Swipe it right out from underneath them. Blade barrier. Oh, excuse me. The cleric employs this spell to set up a wall of circling razor-sharp blades. Those whirl and flash in endless movement around the immobile point. Any creature which attempts to pass through the blade barrier suffers 8 to 64, 88 hit points of damage in doing so. The barrier remains for 3 melee rounds for every level of experience of the cleric casting it. The barrier can cover an area from as small as 5 foot square to as large as 2 inches square, i.e., 20 feet by 20 feet underground, 60 feet by 60 feet outdoors. Conjure Animals, Conjuration, Summoning. The Conjure Animals spell enables a cleric to summon a mammal or several of them to his locale in order that the creatures can attack the cleric's opponents. The conjured animals remain in the cleric's locale for 2 melee rounds for each level of experience of the cleric conjuring them, or until slain. The spellcaster can, by means of his incantation, call up to or 1 or more mammals with hit dice whose total does not exceed his or her level. Thus, a cleric of 12th level could conjure 1 mammal with 12 hit dice, 2 with 6 hit dice, and 3 with 4 hit dice each, 4 with 3 hit dice each, 6 with 2 hit dice each, or 12 with 1 hit die each. For every +1 hit point of a creature's hit dice, count 1/4 of a hit die, i.e., a creature with 4 plus 3 hit dice equals a 4 3/4 hit dice creature. The creatures summoned by the spell will unfailingly attack the opponents of the cleric by whom the spell was cast. Wow. Yeah, Jacob, some of these are really expensive. Find the Path, Divination, Reversible. By use of this spell, the cleric is enabled to find the shortest, most direct route that he or she is seeking, be it the way to or from or out of a locale. The locale can be outdoors or underground, a trap, or even a maze spell. The spell will enable the cleric to select the correct direction, which will eventually lead him or her to egress, the exact point to follow or actions to take, and this knowledge will persist as long as the spell lasts, i.e., 1 turn for each level of experience for the cleric casting Find the Path. The spell frees the cleric and those with him or her from a maze spell in a single melee round, and will continue to do so as long as the spell lasts. The material component for this spell is a set of divination counters of the sort favored by the cleric: bones, ivory counters, sticks, carved runes, or whatever. The reverse, Lose the Path, makes the creature touched totally lost and unable to find its way for the duration of the spell, although it can be led, of course. Heal, Necromantic, Reversible. The very potent Heal spell enables the cleric to wipe away disease and injury in the creature who receives the benefits of the spell. It will completely cure any and all diseases and or blindness of the recipient and heal all hit points of damage suffered due to wounds or injury, save 1 to 4 d4. It dispels a feeble-minded spell. Naturally, the effects can be negated by later wounds, injuries, and diseases. The reverse, Harm, infects the victim with a disease and causes loss of all hit points as damage, save 1 to 4 d4. If a successful touch is inflicted. For creatures not affected by the Heal or Harm spell, see Cure Light Wounds. Part Water, Alteration. By employing the Part Water spell, the cleric is able to cause water or similar liquid to move apart, thus forming a trough. The depth and length of the trough created by the spell is dependent upon the level of the cleric, and a trough 3 foot deep by 1 foot by 2 inches, 20 feet or 20 yards, is created per level, i.e. a 12th level cleric would part water 36 feet deep by 12 feet wide by 24 inches, 240 feet or 240 yards long. The trough will remain as long as the spell lasts, or until the cleric who cast it opts to end its effects. Dispel Magic. The material component of this spell is the cleric's religious symbol. Let's see. Yeah, seriously, Justin, that summon, that servant one, the aerial servant one, was hardcore. He'll actively try to murder you. All right, Speak with Monsters, Alteration. When cast, the Speak with Monsters spell allows the cleric to converse with any type of creature which has any form of communication ability. That is, the monster will understand the intent of what is said to it by the cleric. The creature or creatures thus spoken to will be checked by your referee to order In order to determine reaction, all creatures of the same type as that chosen by the cleric to speak to can likewise understand if they are within range. This spell lasts for 1 melee round per level of experience of the cleric casting it, and during its duration, conversation can take place as the monster is able and desires. All right. Stone Tell, divination. When the cleric casts a stone tell upon an area, the very stones will speak and relate to the caster, who or what has touched them, as well as telling what is covered, concealed, or simply behind the place that they are. The stones will relate complete descriptions as required. The material component for this spell are a drop of mercury and a bit of clay. This makes me think of Labyrinth, where that, like I said, it was the hands that were talking in that. But Word of Recall, alteration. The Word of Recall spell takes the cleric instantly back to his or her sanctuary when the word is uttered. The sanctuary must be specifically designated in advance by the cleric. It must be a well-known place, but it can be any distance from the cleric, above or below ground. Transportation by the Word of Recall spell is infallibly safe. The cleric is able to transport, in addition to himself or herself, 250 gold pieces weight cumulative per level of experience. Thus, a 15th level cleric could transport his or her person and 3,750, 275 pounds, gold pieces weight in addition. This extra matter can be equipment, treasure, or living material such as another person. That's pretty cool. I think that's where we're going to stop, because this is getting pretty, after an hour of this, it gets a little bit challenging to form words. Yeah, I think we're going to stop at 7th level spells. So that is where we're going to pick it up next time. This spell section is going to take me a couple episodes to get through, because there's a lot of spells to go through. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I do appreciate your time and attention. This is, it's a lot of fun for me to sort of revisit this, original game that I started playing way back in the day. It was a lot of fun then, and I think it's a lot of fun revisiting in this way. So that is going to do it for this episode of Gaming Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Do you have any favorite cleric spells? Did you find out any new ones that you had forgotten about or just weren't aware of in the first place? And are these material components rational? How many people are going to be carrying around dung? Feel free to email me at info@dragonlance-saga.com or comment below. Thank you all for tuning in. I'd like to once again invite you to consider becoming a patron or member of this channel, and you can pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link, all of which are in the description below. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slán Javar.